You wake up and immediately feel it. The day is controlling you again.
Five years ago, I was confident, ready for anything. I trained hard, made decisions, I wrote down my goals.
Today I'm going to show you how to take back control of your life in just 7 simple steps, not tomorrow, right now.
If you're ready, watch until the end. Your new life starts with this video.
I, John D. Rockefeller, have lived long enough to know that most men do not own their lives. They merely rent them out to employers who dictate their hours, to creditors who dictate their wages, to habits which dictate their will, and to passions which dictate their judgment. They wake when the bell rings, eat what is placed before them, spend what is left in their pockets, and die wondering where the years went. I have watched this spectacle with the cold eye of a man who refused, from his earliest youth, to be such a creature. And I tell you now, plainly, control over your life is not a gift, not an inheritance, not a stroke of fortune. It is a discipline. It is built, brick by brick, by the man who is willing to govern himself before any other thing in this world dares govern him. I begin with this subject because I have observed over my many decades in commerce and in life that no fortune, however large, can rescue a man who has lost dominion over himself. I have seen heirs squander millions in a single decade. I have seen brilliant engineers ruined by their appetites. I have seen partners of mine, men of sharp intellect, brought low by indecision, by drink, by the inability to say no when no was required. Money is merely a magnifier. It enlarges what a man already is. If he is master of himself, money makes him formidable. If he is a slave to his impulses, money accelerates his ruin. Therefore, the question of control over one's life is the foundational question, the one that must be answered before any discussion of wealth, of business, of legacy can sensibly proceed. Now let me speak frankly about what control actually means, for the word is much abused. Control is not the loud, posturing dominance of the man who shouts at his clerks and bullies his wife. That is weakness wearing a costume. Real control, the kind that built Standard Oil from a single Cleveland refinery into the most efficient industrial concern the world had ever seen, is quiet. It is internal before it is external. It is the capacity to direct one's own attention, one's own time, one's own money, and one's own emotions toward chosen ends, without being deflected by every passing temptation, fear, or fashionable opinion. Let me set down the principles by which I governed my own life, that you may judge them and apply what is useful. The first principle is the dominion of the ledger. From the age of 16, when I was earning $4 a week as an assistant bookkeeper at Hewitt & Tuttle in Cleveland, I kept a small book, Ledger A I called it, in which I recorded every penny that entered or left my hands. Every penny, the cost of a candle, a donation to the church, a streetcar fare, a pair of gloves. I have kept such a ledger every year of my adult life. Some have laughed at this practice. They were generally the same men who 10 years later could not explain to their wives where the household money had gone. A man who does not know where his money is, does not know where his life is. The ledger is not a clerical exercise, it is a mirror. It shows you, without flattery, what you actually value, as opposed to what you claim to value. A man may say he values his family, but if his ledger shows that he spends thrice as much on liquor as on his children's education, the ledger has spoken the truth and his mouth has lied. Begin, therefore, by writing down every dollar. Within 90 days you will know yourself better than 10 years of philosophy could teach you. The second principle is the dominion of the hour. Time, gentlemen, is the only commodity that cannot be replenished. A barrel of oil pumped from the ground may be replaced by another barrel. An hour spent in idleness is gone forever. I rose early. I worked steadily. I refused to attend banquets and society functions which consumed evenings without producing any benefit beyond vanity. I have been called a recluse for this. I do not mind. The men who attended every gala died poorer than their grandfathers. I attended only what served a purpose, and I built a concern which, at its height, refined 90% of the petroleum in the United States. Examine your week. Make a record, hour by hour, of how it is spent. You will be appalled. You will discover that the average man wastes between 4 and 6 hours a day on activity that neither rests him, nor enriches him, nor improves those he loves. To take control of your life, you must take control of those hours first. Reclaim them, direct them, plant them like seeds in soil you have chosen. The third principle is the dominion of the appetite. I do not speak only of food and drink, though I observed strict moderation in both throughout my life. I speak of every appetite, for praise, for novelty, for amusement, for the good opinion of strangers, for the latest goods displayed in the latest shop windows. The man who cannot say, "I do not need this," to a passing impulse is no master of his own house. The merchants of the world have studied human weakness for centuries, and in our modern age they study it with instruments my generation could scarcely have imagined. Every shop, every advertisement, every glittering display is constructed to bypass your judgment and seize your purse. The remedy is not anger, the remedy is discipline. Decide in advance, in the cool of the morning, what you will and will not purchase. Then walk through the marketplace as a man walks through a hostile country, with eyes open and hand on his purse. The fourth principle is the dominion of association. A man becomes, over time, the average of those with whom he passes his hours. I chose my associates with great care. Henry Flagler, my partner in the early days of Standard Oil, there was a man of immense capability, of steady judgment, of unshakable nerve. Samuel Andrews, who understood the chemistry of refining better than any man alive in those years. I sought out such men, and I avoided their opposites. I will not pretend this is easy. There will be relations whom you cannot avoid. Family, neighbors, certain colleagues. But with regard to the friends you choose, the company you keep in your free hours, the voices you allow into your mind through books, and now through these glowing screens of the modern age, there you have absolute sovereignty, and you must exercise it. Cut away those who drag you downward. Do it firmly, but without cruelty. Your life is too short and too valuable to be spent in the company of men who will ensure you never rise above them. The fifth principle is the dominion of fear. Most men are governed by fear without ever recognizing it. Fear of poverty drives them to take poor jobs and stay in them for 40 years. Fear of opinion drives them to dress, speak, and think as their neighbors do. Fear of failure prevents them from beginning the enterprise which would have made them prosperous. I will tell you a hard truth. I felt fear many times in my life. When the Pennsylvania Railroad threatened to break our shipping arrangements, when the Tidewater Pipeline was constructed to challenge our control of transportation, when the courts moved at last to dissolve the Standard Oil Trust in 1911, I felt fear, but I did not obey it. I examined it as I would examine a column of figures, coldly, methodically, and asked, what is the worst that can occur, and can I survive it? Almost always the worst was survivable. Fear, when looked at squarely, shrinks. When fled from, it grows. The man who masters his fear has unlocked a power that the multitude cannot comprehend. The sixth principle, and one I hold particularly dear, is the dominion of one's own thought. I observe that the average man does not think. He repeats. He repeats the opinions of his newspaper, his minister, his employer, his cousin. He calls these repeated opinions his views, and he will defend them with passion, though he has never examined them. To take control of your life, you must take control of your mind. You must learn to set aside an hour daily for genuine reflection, pen in hand, paper before you, no distraction. And ask yourself the questions the world will not ask. What am I trying to build? Whom am I trying to become? What, in my present manner of living, contradicts the ends I claim to seek? Most men flee from such questions because the answers are uncomfortable. The discomfort is the price of admission to a sovereign life. Now allow me to tell you something of my own beginnings, that you may see these principles were not theories I composed in old age, but laws I lived by from the start. My father, William Avery Rockefeller, was a man of considerable charm and considerable irresponsibility. He traded in what we today would call dubious goods, patent medicines mostly, and he was often absent for long periods. My mother, Eliza, held our family together with prayer, parsimony, and an iron will. From her I learned the value of method. From my father, in a manner he did not intend, I learned the cost of a life without discipline. I resolved before I was 15 that I would never live as he had lived, at the mercy of circumstance, of mood, of the next opportunity that flickered into view. When I obtained my first position at Hewitt & Tuttle on September 26, 1855, a date I have always called Job Day and have privately commemorated each year throughout my life, I earned not quite $4 a week. From that pittance, I tithed to the church. I gave to charities. I saved. By the time I was 19, I had accumulated enough, together with a loan of $1,000 from my father at 10% interest. Yes, he charged me interest, and I paid it, to enter into partnership with Maurice Clark in the produce commission business. The Civil War came. We prospered, supplying provisions to the Union Army. And then I saw what others had not yet seen, that the new oil industry, which had begun in earnest in Pennsylvania in 1859, was not a passing speculation, but the foundation of an entire industrial age. In 1863, we entered the refining business. By 1865, I had bought out my partners, Clark and his brothers, for $72,500 at auction. I was 25 years old. By 1870, we had organized the Standard Oil Company of Ohio. By the late 1870s, we controlled approximately 90% of American refining capacity. I do not recite these figures to boast. I am long past such vanities. I recite them because I want you to understand that none of it occurred by accident. Every step was calculated. Every dollar was tracked. Every contract was studied line by line. I did not gamble. I did not speculate. I built. And here is a particular lesson I would press upon you. Many believed Standard Oil grew through aggression alone. That is not the truth. It grew because we were obsessed, and I use the word deliberately, with efficiency. We measured the number of drops of solder used to seal each tin can of kerosene. When we discovered we were using 40 drops, we tested 38. 38 worked. We tried 37. Some cans leaked. We returned to 38. Across millions of cans, the savings were enormous. We manufactured our own barrels because the price the coopers charged us was too high, and in manufacturing them, we discovered that drying the staves before assembly reduced their weight and saved us on rail freight. We built our own pipelines because the railroads gouged us, and once we owned the pipelines, the railroads came to us begging for our shipments. None of this was magic. All of it was attention. Relentless, daily, unglamorous attention to what most men consider beneath their notice. This is the deeper meaning of control, you see. It is not a single grand decision. It is 10,000 small ones made correctly day after day, year after year. The man who cannot save 38 drops of solder will never save $38,000. The principle is identical, only the scale differs. Now let me speak of how these principles apply to the world in which you find yourselves today, an age I observe with great interest from my study, even from beyond the veil of years. You live in an age of extraordinary abundance and equally extraordinary distraction. Every man and woman now carries in their pocket a device which, in my time, would have been considered the work of a sorcerer. Through it flows a constant stream of news, opinion, entertainment, and solicitation. I tell you plainly, this device, used without discipline, is the single greatest threat to personal sovereignty that human beings have ever encountered. It is engineered by exceedingly clever men, employing the most advanced sciences of psychology to capture and hold your attention. For attention in your age has become the chief commodity bought and sold. When your attention is captured, your time is captured. When your time is captured, your life is captured. You become, without knowing it, an unpaid worker in someone else's enterprise. Therefore, the first work of the modern man who would take control of his life is to take control of his attention. Set firm rules for the use of these devices. Designate hours in which they are silent. Designate hours in which they do not enter the bedroom, or the dinner table, or the place of worship, or the hour of reflection. Treat your attention as I treated capital, as a precious and limited resource, never to be spent without conscious decision. The second great application concerns income and savings in your modern economy. The principle has not changed since my day, though many imagine it has. A man must earn more than he spends. He must invest the surplus into productive instruments. He must, where possible, develop sources of income that do not require his daily presence. What you now call passive income, though the word is somewhat misleading, for nothing of value is truly passive. It is merely the harvest of disciplined planning done earlier. Begin by living below your means, not at your means, below them. The man who earns 100 and spends 100 is no freer than the man who earns 10 and spends 10. Both are slaves to their next paycheck. The man who earns 100 and spends 70 is on the road to liberty, for he has $30 each month with which to purchase pieces of the productive world, shares of sound enterprises, holdings in real property, education that increases his earning power and reserves against the inevitable misfortunes of life. The third application concerns work. In my day, men labored for their employers. In your day, many of you can labor for yourselves in ways my generation could scarcely have envisioned. The instruments of enterprise, the means of communication, of design, of distribution, are now available to nearly anyone with the will to use them. This is a magnificent inheritance. Do not squander it. If you are an employee, become the most valuable employee your firm possesses and use the income to build, on the side, an enterprise of your own. Begin small. I began in a single rented refinery on the banks of the Cuyahoga. Build steadily. Reinvest. Be patient. Most men want to be wealthy by Tuesday. The wealth that lasts is the wealth that grows slowly enough to be understood and managed by the man who creates it. The fourth application concerns the body. I lived to 97 years of age. I was born on July 8, 1839, and I departed this life on May 23, 1937. Not because I was naturally robust, for in my 50s I suffered from a digestive ailment so severe that doctors believed I would not survive long. I lived because I altered my habits. I ate sparingly and simply. I walked daily. I did not drink. I did not smoke. I rested when I needed rest, and I refused to allow business worry to consume me past the hour at which the office closed. The man who would control his life must control his body, for without the body there is nothing to control with. Sleep adequately. Eat with restraint. Move daily. Avoid the substances that cloud the mind. These instructions are simple, ancient, and almost universally ignored, which is precisely why those who follow them gain such advantage over those who do not. The fifth application concerns the soul, if I may use that old word. I was a Baptist all my life, and I gave away in the course of my years more than $500 million to causes I believed served humanity. To the University of Chicago, which I helped found in 1890, to the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, established in 1901, to the General Education Board, to the Rockefeller Foundation, established in 1913. I do not say this to claim virtue. I say it because I learned, through my own experience, that a man who acquires without giving becomes a small and bitter creature, however large his accounts. Charity, properly directed, is not a sentimental indulgence. It is part of the architecture of a controlled and meaningful life. It teaches the giver that he is not the center of the universe. It disciplines his sympathies. It returns to society some portion of what society has enabled him to gather. Find a cause worthy of your support and support it consistently. Begin while you are still poor. The habit formed early will serve you when you are wealthy. I would now address a particular illusion which afflicts many in your age. It is the illusion that control over one's life requires waiting. Waiting for the right opportunity, the right partner, the right amount of capital, the right inspiration. This is nonsense. Control begins this morning, with the next hour. It begins with the next dollar spent, the next book chosen, the next conversation entered. It begins with deciding, before your feet touch the floor, what kind of day you intend to have, and then governing the day toward that end. The man who waits for grand circumstances will wait forever. The man who masters small circumstances will, in due time, find the grand ones offering themselves to him, because he has become the kind of man fit to receive them. There will be opposition. There always is. Your habits will resist you. Your friends, comfortable with the man you were, will mock the man you are becoming. Your family, fearful that change in you will require change in them, will counsel moderation and caution. Listen courteously, but do not yield. The reformation of one's own life is the most personal of enterprises, and no committee can be permitted a vote in it. I was mocked by elder businessmen when I demanded efficiencies they considered trivial. I was condemned by newspaper editors who did not understand what I was building. I was hated by competitors whom I had outworked, outthought, and outlasted.
I noted their commentary, and I continued, "The work was the answer. The work is always the answer."
Let me also warn you against a peculiar trap of your modern era, the trap of constant self-display. In my time, a serious man labored quietly and let his works speak for themselves. In your time, there is enormous pressure to publish every thought, every meal, every minor accomplishment to a vast audience of strangers. I observe with concern that many spend more energy curating an image of a successful life than in actually living one. Do not fall into this. The energy required to maintain an audience is energy stolen from the construction of substance. Build first. Display if you must only after the building is sound. The world is full of men who appear successful and are bankrupt within. Do not join their number. Now the practical work. I shall set down a course of action that you may begin tonight if you so choose. First, tonight before you sleep, take a sheet of paper. Divide it in 2 columns. On the left, write down every regular expenditure you can recall from the past week. On the right, write down every hour you spent yesterday and what was done in it. This is your beginning ledger. It will be incomplete and unflattering. That is the proof you have begun honestly. Second, tomorrow morning rise 30 minutes earlier than is your custom. In that half hour, read something of substance. Not news, not entertainment, but a page from a book of genuine weight. Then write, in 3 sentences, what you intend to accomplish that day and what you intend not to do. Third, this week identify one habit which serves no good purpose in your life. A particular expenditure of money, time, or attention which you know, when you are honest, contributes nothing to the man you wish to become. Eliminate it. Do not reduce it. Eliminate it. The half measure is the enemy of reform. Fourth, this month open a separate account into which you will place a fixed portion of every income you receive, 10% at minimum. Do not touch it. Let it accumulate. Within a year you will have a small reserve. Within 5 years, the foundation of capital. Within 20 you will have a fortress against the world's misfortunes and an arsenal for its opportunities. Fifth, this year identify one capability you do not presently possess, but which, if you had it, would substantially increase your value to others. A skill, a body of knowledge, a discipline. Acquire it. Do not dabble. Acquire it as I acquired knowledge of refining, of transportation, of the petroleum trade, thoroughly, deeply, until you know it better than 90 men in 100. Mastery is the door to sovereignty. The dabbler is always at the mercy of the master. Finally, I will speak the hardest word. Most men who read what I have written here will agree, will feel temporarily inspired, and will, within 48 hours, return to the life they had before. They will continue to spend without recording. They will continue to give their hours to amusements that do not nourish them. They will continue to be governed by their fears, their appetites, and the opinions of others. They will tell themselves they will begin soon. Soon is the grave of all reform. There is no soon. There is only now or never. I tell you this not to wound you, but because I have seen too many decent men waste their one allotted life through gentle, perpetual postponement. Do not be among them. Take command of your life as a captain takes command of his ship. Inspect it. Know its provisions and its leaks. Set its course. Discipline its crew, which is the assembly of habits and impulses within you. Be slow to anger and quick to act. Save more than you spend. Read more than you speak. Work more than you complain. Give more than you take. Govern yourself with such firmness that no external authority, no employer, no creditor, no fashion, no fear, has any vacancy left to fill within you. This is what I did in my own way, with my own faults and my own limitations, across nearly a century of life. I built an enterprise that altered the industrial history of the world. I gave away the greater part of my fortune to causes that have, I'm told, improved the lives of countless human beings whose names I never learned. I did not do these things because I was extraordinary. I did them because I refused, from a young age, to surrender the steering of my own life to forces unworthy of holding it. You possess the same capacity. The principles do not belong to me. They belong to anyone with the will to apply them. The question is whether you will apply them, beginning today, in the small and unglamorous matters that compose a life, or whether you will read these words, nod, and forget. I have done my part. I have set down what I know. The remainder belongs to you. Take back the helm. Steer by your own stars. And when, many years hence, you look upon the life you have built, you will know, as I know now, looking back across my own years, that it was yours, truly yours, because you did not lend it out. You commanded it. Begin tonight.